Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Real Clear Values podcast. Today, it is my pleasure to be speaking with Dr. Lynda Shaw. Lynda is a cognitive neuroscientist, business psychologist, and self-confessed brain geek who helps organizations not just survive, but thrive in today's fast-paced world. With a knack for simplifying complicated neuroscience and communication techniques, Lynda works with leaders to tackle big challenges like fear, bias, and unlocking hidden potential without turning the boardroom into a science lab. Lynda, welcome to the Real Clear Values podcast.
Thank you, Tom. How are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good, thanks. Pretty good. Yeah, we just had an interesting pre-chat there about neuroscience and how it relates to so many things, the world that we live in, the country that we live in here in the UK, of course, talking about government budgets and how they affect people and organizational changes and how they affect people and how it all relates. There's so much of it, obviously, that comes back to neuroscience, isn't there?
Yeah. Everything. Absolutely everything. It really does. And when we're living in a time of uncertainty, we really are not able to focus on the big stuff, on the creative thinking and the critical thinking and those wonderfully delicious things that enables us to expand.
Mm.
Instead, we put the blinkers on. We focus on a tunnel vision because of the uncertainty, because we are looking to survive, and we just keep our head down, keep going, and that is not the way to grow a country, to grow wealth or grow anything. And I'm not just talking about the UK, it's happening all around the world. We just do. And in business, I'm not a political creature. I used to be, but I'm not anymore. I'm interested in human behavior.
Mm.
And I know that if no matter what reason there is uncertainty, we do not function very well with it.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. So here's a question for you. Maybe a bigger one, and maybe bigger than this podcast episode in its entirety. But what does the individual do in an uncertain environment? An environment that wherein uncertainty is generated from something so macro as a government budget, or maybe to a lesser extent, an organizational restructure. What does the individual do to thrive as best they can? Not just survive, because survival is something that we geared towards doing anyway, but how can people thrive in that
Well,
situation?
people often say to me, the brain doesn't do change, it doesn't like change. Well, I like a bit, I'm going to push back a bit on that one because actually the brain is change. We break new synapses, neural pathways, neurogenesis, the blood pressure changes, the hydration changes. We are a bubbling cauldron of change. So it's not the change that is the issue, it's uncertainty that is the issue. Because what the brain doesn't like is gaps in information. And if you think about it, we do it all of the time. If we don't know something, we will seek out any kind of information. When it came to COVID and the lockdowns, we were watching the news, we were calling people, there were millions of Zoom calls, we were trying to work out anything that can fill in the gaps because the gaps in information makes us feel very anxious. So we need to calm it down. So what the brain does is it's seeking, the radar's out, and it's seeking, looking for bits of information to hold on to, which will then the brain decides, okay, yeah, that fits my schema, that fits my scripts, that fits my experiences, that fits where I can believe that one. I'll take that as my truth. And the trouble is, we take that as our truth, and often it's on misinformation. So I mean, it's not helpful. It's not healthy. Which is why, if you're a business leader, it's absolutely vital that you're as transparent as business will allow. That you are very clear and concise with telling people everything, because I promise you, they'll go off and they'll fill in the gaps in information themselves, and you'll have a whole heap of trouble trying to sort it out what's going on. So basically, that uncertainty makes us anxious. It makes us very stressful. And when we're in high secretions of cortisol and adrenaline, in a chronic situation, what happens is we've got our tunnel vision like geared up. We've got our blinkers on. So our prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of the brain, isn't doing the thinking. We are now using living on our emotions a lot, and so the clear thinking is very foggy, very vague. So we're not able to expand. So, as people in a country, people in an organization, people in a small company, whatever the scale, if we are not able to think clearly, expansion is not on the agenda. So the opposite of expansion is shrinking. It's no good for us. It's not healthy for us to be not literally shrinking the brain, but our abilities to think clearly are shrinking. So we're not thinking of innovation. We're not thinking of new ideas. We're not being creative. We're not thinking of, yeah, okay, this is a problem we've got, but we're not able to think really well around it. We are just thinking about the basics to keep us going, to survive. So anything where uncertainty is perpetuated is a very unhealthy thing for the organism that we are part of, or indeed for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's really bad for the whole, isn't it? And I also wonder, Linda, if this uncertainty, being in a state of fear, and like you say, people going off and looking for any sort of information, regardless of how credible or factually accurate it is, to fill in the gaps. Does this state of being in a state of fear, does this make us more credulous? Does this make us more likely to believe things that aren't true, that sound good or feel good to us? I'm thinking particularly about disruptors to the system, like maybe demagogues from a political point of view. Are we more susceptible to demagoguery, to being misled, being deceived by people who will tell us what we want to hear in this state of fear as well?
Well, that's the key point. Tell us what we want to hear. So therefore, that will help us feel better because we want to hear that. But when we are in a state of uncertainty, we are not able to critically think about things, including that information. So we are likely, for instance, to somebody says something and it sort of makes us feel better. We're likely to think, yeah, okay, I can make sense of that. They've made me feel better. I'm feeling calm. I'm feeling a bit less anxious. So yeah, I'll run with that as a truth. And they're not thinking, well, actually, the last time they said that, they lied. They lied through their back teeth. A blatant lying. And now, if there is blatant lying going on, why should I believe that piece of information when there is a whole history of lying? And again, I'm not naming names. I'm not talking any political parties or anything. I'm talking about anyone that we're working with. So, in actual fact, the lies become confusion. And they confuse us, and we start to back the wrong horse. To be honest with you, we start to believe that bit of information. We take it on board, and our brain calms down a bit because there are the gaps of information not there. And then we've got the illusion of truth, which is a psychology theory, in which that if we hear something often enough, it becomes truth, and then we will defend it. And even though it's nonsense, we will defend it to the nth degree. So the illusion of truth is very, very prominent in times of uncertainty as well. So if we hear something often enough and we take it as a truth, then we will defend it. And then who knows where we go from there.
Yeah. Is that because hearing it again and again and again creates neural pathways? Is that how it works from a
It,
neuroscientific point of view?
from a psychological point of view, it becomes, well, if I've yeah, I've heard that before. Where did I hear it?
Right.
I can't remember where I heard that, but yeah. So and you
Mm,
start. That's how you start to think, and you think, well, yeah, it must be true because I've heard that somewhere before. You can hear yourself saying it, can't you?
mhm. Yeah.
Neuroscientifically, if you hear something often enough, it becomes comfortable. It becomes we don't push back on it. It's not a
Mm,
surprise. It becomes a norm.
yeah.
In terms of believing it and then acting upon it, then we will start developing neural pathways around it, with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, when the information comes in, it starts to become a belief. Yeah, most certainly.
Interesting. So onto the neuroscience specifically, because neuroscience is something there's been a lot of buzz around neuroscience, particularly in recent years, and there are all sorts of fads and fables around it. So what do people typically get wrong about neuroscience?
People think that it's far too geeky, it's far too academic, and which it can be. Of course, it is. It's an extremely complicated topic, but the way I've awarded my doctorate 18 years ago, so I've been doing this for some time now, and I know that people in organizations do not want academic stuff at all. They don't want to be jammed with information. There is too much information out there anyway. So what neuroscience can do when it's being handled, the topic's being handled by somebody who understands the business side of things as well, is that what we do is we actually make it incredibly practical and relevant to the situation that that organization is in. So if it's something like poor decision making, judgments, communication is big. I mean, it's about everything, isn't it? Let's face it. So if things like that, but people want to know what's going to fix something at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. And sometimes people think, well, neuroscience isn't going to help me that because that's going to be all academic and irrelevant. It's not true. Neuroscience is about the brain and behavior. My business is called Brain and Behavior Limited. So the brain changes our behavior, the behavior changes our brain. We are soft wiring our brain. We're changing it according to what we believe and how we behave. So our brain changes our behavior changes our brain. That means that we have more control over our behavior and our brain than we think we have. Now, we don't have 100% control over our brain. Of course, we don't, because the brain has to operate on a fight or flight mechanism. It has to operate to keep us safe, which is below conscious awareness. I'm talking about when we are delivering or working in a consciously, that we are able to think, well, hang on a minute, and we know that by me coming along and saying, okay, this is what's happening in the brain here. This is what's going on in that person's brain over there, and this is why and how we can have a better conversation about it. Then we start to realize that yes, we can change that relationship. Yes, we can change the way we're communicating with that person. Yes, we can change the way our brain is soft wiring, which means that we have more control over this, and that if that other person understands that as well, it's even better because you can seriously agree to disagree. And I know that's a cliche, but you can, if there are things that you don't agree with, you'll understand one another's perception, one another's perspective, and you go, well, okay, I hear you, I get it. Let's work on this together, even though we disagree in some parts of it. So we're in better agreement. And so you therefore you're preempting any conflict. You see what I mean? There's loads and loads of things. That obviously, the behavior is about absolutely everything. But once we understand the neuroscience of some of the behaviors that we have, we can change them and change the wiring accordingly.
Yeah, it's that self-awareness, isn't it? It's that phrase that's written on the Delphi Temple, "Know thyself," one of the most ancient inscriptions that we found in terms of written communication. Know thyself, and it's so true, isn't it? Once we know ourselves and that our brains are plastic, so to speak, and that they can be rewired, and other people's are as well. And I like what you said earlier as well about how the brain does just change itself anyway. It's not you don't even have to consciously do it, do you? You don't have to. It's not like it's not like a car engine or something where it just stays the same unless it's changed by man or environment. It literally will just change itself. And having that awareness means that we have,
Really?
yeah, it's like we have a responsibility to determine, how it's going to change and chart a course for how we want it to change. If we know that it is changing and that there's a pathway that it can change towards or away from, then that gives us a great deal of empowerment, doesn't it, to make decisions about how we want it to be going forwards.
Brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And of course, the anxiety comes from a lack of control, feeling out of control. This enables people to feel a modicum of control that they didn't have before. Here's the idea. Look, I've just picked up this envelope. I'm writing Christmas cards here. So here's an envelope. If that is your brain, okay, your brain is made up of obviously loads of different things, but let's just say your brain is made up of conscious and unconscious processing. In this context, conscious processing means that is what we're aware of at any given time. The rest we are not aware of. If I said to you, okay, Tom, what percentage of this piece of paper, of this brain, What percentage is conscious processing? What would you say it is?
Oh, I'm going to say it's probably lower than one might expect. So I'm going to say 30 to 40%.
Okay. Can you see that dot?
Yeah.
That's conscious processing.
Wow. A lot less than 30 or 40, 30 to 40%, isn't it?
Very much so. Very much so.
Yeah.
That is below conscious awareness.
Mm.
Okay. Now that dot came up with from the idea. It was on a documentary in the UK some years ago. A group of neuroscientists were asked the same question individually, and they all agreed individually that that was about what was conscious processing, and the rest is unconscious processing. So it came from solid source. So basically, the greatest skill that any leader can have, and that's somebody who is running their family, that's somebody who is running a small business, that's somebody who's running a corporation, that is somebody who's running a political party, that is somebody who's running a government, that's somebody who's running a country, that's somebody, everybody, okay? If you want to be a great leader, whatever your scenario, the greatest skill is self-awareness. And once you have self awareness and you are consciously aware of how you're coming across and how people might be hearing and seeing you, then you have got a greater chance of being one of the best leaders there are, the best parents there are, whatever. So it's really important that we consider self-awareness. Now, I come from a place of a lot of reading on this because I've been reading about consciousness since I was 14. And my doctorate's about unconscious processing of emotion. So I used fMRI scanning equipment in my research. So I really do buy off on the topic of consciousness and unconscious processing. Now, consciousness can be, of course, what one might call the soul, the essence, whatever it is, and that's the big stuff, and that's what really floats my boat. That's what I find extremely exciting. But in terms of when we are running a business, I operate in a much smaller level, still in an expanding thinking level, which is all about expansion up here, but still expanding thinking, but also I'm really concentrating on what what clues are you missing that are not said? What is not said? What is not heard? What is not seen? What is it that's happening on in the boardroom at the moment that you are not aware of, but is right there as clear as day? And it's below conscious awareness of the person who is speaking or delivering or whatever. And it's also below conscious awareness for the people who are hearing it, or indeed not knowing they're hearing it or not seeing it. It is sounds complicated, but it's not. It is like it's delicious. It is, it's delicious. It's a magic potion. It is a magic potion of how to become self-aware and how to communicate better. So yeah, I'm sorry, I went right off on a tangent there.
No, it's good. It's good because I think when you put it into that context in terms of those proportions between unconscious and conscious, it begs the question, what do we do with all this unconscious element that is below the surface? How do we navigate that? Where's our empowerment and autonomy in regards to that?
There you go. That's probably one of the biggest questions you could possibly ask me. Well done. I went to the Science of Consciousness conference in Barcelona this summer, just gone, and there were about 500 delegates there. They were psychologists, biologists, parabiologists, quantum biologists rather. There was quantum physicists, there were mathematicians, there were parapsychologists. They were all, oh my gosh, I kid you not, Tom. I was like a dog with two tails. I was loving every minute of it. The amount of research and people trying to understand the biggest conundrum in the known universe, which is consciousness, was off the scale magnificent. And it's never, no one has agreed about anything yet. And I think it's going to be a long time for it to come. However, I'll give you an example. We look, as neuroscientists, we look at what the brain does. Okay, we use fMRI scanning equipment, we use EEG, we use lots of different techniques to work out what's going on in the brain, and we're doing really well about a lot of things. but there are some things we're not doing very well at all. And that and consciousness and what I'm talking about is something that no, we're not doing very well. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. When we, one of the lecturers that was at the consciousness science of consciousness conference, one of the professors stood up on stage, and she was talking about something called toxic positivity. Now, toxic positivity is she's been researching it her whole career. She's got a lot of data on it, and she's a parapsychologist. And she was looking at it with her lens in parapsychology. And it's about when people are in a coma and they're about to die, the loved ones are called to their bedside, and it's not long before they're going to leave this earth. And all of us, and their brain is particularly damaged. It's damaged to the point where if you scan the brain, there are gaps of material that's missing, that's destroyed, either from a stroke or Alzheimer's disease or something. So when you're looking in a scanner, you don't see the brain. What you see is blackness. There's just bits of brain that are destroyed. They've gone, including memory. Now, he has documented many cases where people are there in a coma, they're about to go, and all of a sudden they wake up, they sit up, and they have a conversation with their loved ones. Remember, no memory. They're having a proper conversation with their loved ones. They're laughing and joking. One person even had a glass of champagne. And then 10 minutes or so later, it varies, that person will slip back into a coma and they die within the next 24 hours. What is that about? How can we say that, is everything's in the brain? Actually, how can it be when the brain is destroyed to that level? What is going on here? And this is the conundrum that we're talking about. This is I kid you not, the people in the audience, the quantum physicists were going, oh yes, but, and they pushing back, and everybody and the other people, the other disciplines were going, no, yes, but, yes, but, yes, but, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I was like this, watching them all, how they were dissecting it, and this is what's going on when we are really working with the potential of what we can learn about the humans. Let's just say humans, human behavior, human everything. Now, when again, we have to try and now, that's my thing, okay? But I now have to condense this and be very practical in a business way. So when I talk about the unconscious processing and conscious processing, now we can operate. Now we can make that. Now in neuroscience, we have come a long, long way on that one. So we are now looking, right, okay, that's below conscious awareness. That means that, are you looking at the micro expressions in the eyes of Professor Paul Ekman's work, of these little flickers of something when somebody's eyes are telling you that they're thinking of something different or they're not quite sure of something. You don't know what they're thinking, but you know their eyes have just told you a story. And they have done that before they're consciously aware of it. So you are able to detect what they are processing unconsciously, not exactly what it is because you're not a mind reader, but you'll know that something's off, that something's not quite right. So then you can have a further conversation and say, okay, have I explained that clearly enough? Do you have any questions? So therefore you can actually work with it. Same with what we hear. What is unseen? How people's posture is. I mean, we know about body language, but there is more to it. There is more to how the voice can change. Honestly, I have worked with one business leader I'm thinking of at the moment, whose team was in a real pickle. They were not operating at all well, and all he did was soften his voice and drop his shoulders. And everybody else calmed down. They didn't even notice consciously that he had softened his voice and lowered his shoulders. But that's all he did, and they became calmer. You see what I mean? We
Yeah.
are able to do so much when we understand how the brain works a little bit and how we can work with unconscious processing.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. Like you say, there's a whole ocean out there in the unconscious realm when you compare it to the conscious realm. And there's such a lack of understanding through one paradigm. There's that saying, I think of that saying often. I don't know who said it originally. Some philosopher said, to the man with a hammer, everything is a nail. So everybody's explaining the world through their particular paradigms, through their particular lenses, which is of course what they're going to do because those are the things that they've got, those are the tools they've got at their disposal. But it is so fascinating, like you say, when it comes to consciousness. So what else would you say? You mentioned about softening the voice and lowering the shoulders. What do you reckon of from a neuroscience point of view, things like meditation, yoga, and other wellness practices that have become really popular in recent years? How do they help from a neuroscience point of view?
There's a huge amount of research that shows that most certainly the brain appreciates and calms down and thinks more clearly when it meditates. However, it's not 100% demonstrated neuroscientifically. There is still some pushback. For some people, meditation doesn't work. But my father used to say years ago that, everybody needs a quiet time. So maybe rather than us get hung up on techniques, maybe do what is quite natural to us. What natural to us might be just to sit inside and watch the rain fall or go and walk in the rain or something. Because when we put the brain in alpha frequency, we know for sure that when we use alpha frequency, which is that light meditative state, so it's not full meditation, it's a light meditative state. That is when we are incredibly creative. Like, when you're in the shower and you come up with an idea, yeah, or you're driving along and you're on automatic, and all of a sudden you think, oh, no, that's the answer. And we can actually make that happen. We can make it happen by literally just staring out of the window. I mean, I don't know about you, but I was often told off at school because I was staring out of the window. My teacher didn't understand that I was actually doing the best I could possibly do at that time because I put myself in alpha frequency, which meant that I was being very creative in my thinking. So we do know that not for everybody, but we do know that there are certainly a lot of people who benefit from meditation, yoga, and the like. But if it's not your thing and it doesn't work for you, then just quiet. Just
Yeah,
be quiet. Just
yeah,
10 minutes a day. Just be quiet.
yeah. It's so interesting, isn't it? For me, this is quite a random thing to share, but I started listening to during the pandemic. Somebody got me into listening to Gregorian monk chants, and my thing to relax rather than meditating, because to meditate you still got to be quite proactive. You still got to be actively doing something when you're meditating. But for me, listening to Gregorian monk chants and having a sauna, because we've got an infrared sauna at home, and just lying in the sauna with headphones on with the Gregorian monk chants playing, it will knock me out. It will absolutely, it will ground me down. It will knock me out. It's so good for relaxation, not like nothing else. I've done yoga, I've done various other types of meditation, but for some reason, I don't know the science behind it, but it absolutely grounds me like nothing else. It's
Well,
quite interesting.
it's also, I love it that you do that, but of course that's musical.
Yeah, it
So
is.
you've got rhythm. Now, la, 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 la. There is a book called Musicophilia, and it's by Oliver Sacks. Oliver Sacks was one of our neuroscientists. He's a wonderful, wonderful man, and he writes beautifully. So if you read any of his books, you're in for a treat. It's not going to be heavy academia. It's all about his case studies through his work. He was a very much an applied neuroscientist. Oliver Sacks died a few years ago now, which is a great shame. Anyway, Musicophilia it's a book on what happens to the brain when it hears music. Now, we don't know why that music is so significant, but we do know it is. Now, is it because we breathe in rhythm, our heart beats in rhythm, we walk in rhythm? I don't know. But if you have a look at the book, because it's astonishing. And of course, one of the most famous case studies, or indeed multiple case studies that we can talk about, is people with advanced Alzheimer's disease who can actually, and advanced dementias, who will remember the lyrics of a song when it's played, but they won't remember their children's names or more. So we know that music unlocks things. Why? I don't know. But it's fascinating. So you're using a rhythm like that is beautiful.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think I don't know if there's like such a thing as as good and bad music in terms of relaxing. I know some people talk about certain frequencies of music as well, certain frequencies of sound which are particularly amenable to certain types of thinking, certain states of the brain. But it certainly feels like that to me. I know there's certain types of music that I find quite disruptive, or if I want to be disrupted, if I want to disrupt myself, i.e., if I'm exercising, doing something at high intensity, then I will create a different environment. I've not got monk chants on for that. I've got other music on that is going to produce a different stimulus, if you like. So it is very interesting how this all works. And again, it's what you, it goes back to what you said before about self-awareness and knowing what effect different things have on us. If I know this type of music has this effect on me, then I go that way, I make that choice. And if I want a different effect, then I make a different choice. But it's knowing how those different stimuli relate to you, isn't it? And knowing what sort of effect that's going to produce.
It is, and always remember that every brain is unique. Every one of us are unique. There is never a repetition. So whatever suits one person may not suit another, and that's fine. It's absolutely cool.
Yeah.
So we have but one self-awareness is still key. You're
Mm,
absolutely right. Self-awareness is always key because you know yourself. You know that in this conversation that certain music will agitate you, whereas other music will calm you down. Other music, some music will lift your spirits. Other people will make you cry. I mean, you listen to a lone bagpiper, I'll cry my eyes out. You know,
mm,
it's the saddest sound, but other people wouldn't have that because their perceptions and their schemas and their experiences in life are not. There is no relationship between that sound and and what they know. So
mm.
that therefore their own personal knowing. So therefore, it will have a different effect. But
Yeah,
gosh, yeah,
yeah, yeah. No, it is fascinating because yeah, and I'm glad you said that everybody's different because when I play the monk chants and my wife hears it, it freaks her out. She finds them
there
quite,
you go.
she finds them quite freaky and quite scary. Whereas I love them. I think they're great and they just relax me. Whereas for her, it's like oh, they give me the creeps. I don't know why, but they just freak me out because for different people, I suppose, have different associations as well, don't they? So it's
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And the story I like to give, and this got a bit of poetic license, but if you take two women who have got babies due exactly the same time, exactly the same day, and these two women are in their second trimester of pregnancy, and that is when the baby's developing taste buds on the tongue, and they're able to taste the amniotic fluid that they sip a little bit whilst in the womb. And so they're in the second trimester on this particular time when they're able to taste now. Woman one eats some sour cooking apple. So her baby's first taste is now sour. At exactly the same time, woman two, she's eating chocolate. So her baby's very first taste is sweet. The following day, they swap. So the woman who had the sour taste is now introducing sweet, and vice versa for the other one. And now the third day, the babies or the women are sharing a bowl of olives. So the baby's third flavor that they're tasting is salty. Those babies will have a different perception of salty based on their first two experiences, even though they were exactly the same, but introduced the other way round. By the time the babies are born, they would have heard noises. They would have had the woman rubbing her tummy, perhaps. They would have felt there had been emotional turmoil going on with a chemical reaction. There have been all sorts of things going on. So each perception will be based or perceived based upon the perceptions that have gone before. So the babies are born unique, their perceptions are unique. And by the time we're adults, you can't even calculate it. So everything, people are hearing me now, they're seeing me now, they're hearing you, they're seeing you, and everybody will have a different perception of us based upon their experiences so far. And here's the key, is they're all correct
Mm. Yeah,
because it's their personal reality.
yeah.
That is golden to understand that, especially if you are working in an organization, no matter how big or a family, whatever, because you'll know that just because somebody is disagreeing with you, to them they're correct. And
Hmm.
to you, you are correct and you're disagreeing with them.
Mm.
Once you know that, you can come to a place of agreement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's again, you've got some control going on.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, having that awareness and understand it. I remember at a PSA meeting, PSA Professional Speaking Association, that is a PSA meeting. I think it was Nigel Risner gave a speech. I think you probably know Nigel through PSA, but I remember he was quite. It was the first time I'd ever heard him speak, and I thought, whoa, this guy's pretty on the nose, so to speak. And I said to him at the end of his speech, I said, how do you get away with speaking to people like that? So direct and maybe a little bit abrasive for some people, maybe not for everybody, but for some people. And he basically said, you know what? People are not going to, there's going to be some people who won't like you anyway. And I was wearing a grey jumper at the time. He said, there'll be people who don't like you because you're wearing a grey jumper. And so you just do what you're going to do anyway. And I thought that was an interesting way of looking at it. And I don't think he meant to say, do what you want and that's it. But it was more about authenticity and about being authentic and true to yourself than maybe shying away from that, so to speak, because you just don't know what it is about you that could trigger a negative reaction in somebody else. And it can be something that you can't do anything about. So it's best to be your authentic self and put your best foot forward. And I always remember that. And I thought it was I think it was pre-pandemic actually, but I always remembered that and thought to myself, yeah, it's very difficult to argue with that because there are so many. I mean, we see it ourselves. When you get an impression of somebody and you're picking something out about the way that they're dressed or what they're wearing, and you think, well, yeah, I do that. Like we all do it because we've all got these programs, haven't we? These neural pathways. So that brings me on to another question, Linda, or another thread here, and that's the distinction between neuroscience and psychology, because I imagine these two things get conflated quite a lot. So, how would you draw a distinction between the two?
Psychology is based on theories. Um, and some of those theories over the years have fallen by the wayside and no longer relevant or valid. Other theories have stayed the duration and are still very, very valid and we need to hear about them. Neuroscience is a science. We use scanning equipment to see what's going on in the brain. So psychology tends to be a little bit more subjective. Neuroscience is more objective. I, for me personally, I use both because I think it enables me to give some neuroscience to people and then also give a support with a psychology, a framework around it, and then practical applications after that. So I think it's very handy to be able to use both. But to be honest with you, people don't often understand the difference between a psychologist, a psychiatrist. People don't understand necessarily all of the disciplines unless they've personally been involved in it in some way or other. So it's understandable that people get it a bit confused. The thing to remember is if it's about human behavior and it's by somebody who's well qualified, then it's worth investigating.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting that you say, how neuroscience is a science and psychology is based on theory. I mean, theory can be very valuable because again, it just gives us another lens through which to look at things and see things. But it's and theory, I think it was Clayton Christensen, the business academic, who said, theory is basically a statement about what um, what makes what happen and why, or something to that extent. And that is it. And it might be true or it might be false, but like you say, the passage of time and different case studies and different experiences can prove or disprove that, and perhaps refine it as well. Maybe a theory is correct in certain circumstances, and it just becomes further refined and more useful in specific contexts. So it's all to play for in that respect, isn't it?
It is, and again, we're talking about human beings. I mean, I work with people a lot. Obviously, I do. That's what I'm into human beings. That's always have been. And you think I'm working with somebody, especially if I'm mentoring them and I'm getting to know them really, really well, and we're doing our thing. We're helping them, and then all of a sudden, bang, a curveball comes along, and I think I didn't see that one coming. Didn't see it coming at all. And I've been around the block a few times and I just thought I didn't see it because that's the beauty of human behavior is that, we think we know somebody and then we realize that no, not necessarily so. And they're different. Everybody's different. There's no one
Yeah.
size that fits all.
Yeah, I love that there's a concept that Heidegger, just moving from psychology to philosophy, there's a concept that Heidegger took from the Greeks, the idea of unconcealment, that a thing is only known in relation to other things. So, like you say about thinking that you know somebody, it's like, yes, you know them in a particular context, or maybe several contexts, if you know them in different groups or different communities. But you put them in another situation and another version of them will appear or another side of them will appear. And I think that's really fascinating, that idea of unconcealment, this idea of things being unconcealed or aspects of the person being unconcealed in these different contexts as well. Because I think that's something as well that you look at and you think, wow, okay, it's that idea of, certain situations bring out the best or the worst in people. And I think that's a nice segue actually into another section now, Linda, to talk about neuroscience of the workplace as well. We've talked about this, or you talked about this at the outset in terms of workplace uncertainty around, whether it's around restructures, changes, or whatever it is. What is it that leaders can do to really help to get the best out of people, to create the environment that is best for their people? In terms of, I know you mentioned already about being as clear as they can be, but let's put aside the example of potential restructures, but let's assume all things being equal, just regular day-to-day work. Let's think instead about just day-to-day job, everything's just kind of quote unquote normal. What is it that leaders can do to create the best possible environment to essentially bring the best out of their people? What are they looking to do?
Okay, well, what you want to do is you do want to create psychological safety. You do want to create a place where people can express emotion if they have to. You do want to create a place where they are feeling they are not judged or they're going to be belittled, because then people will shrink. You've got to think if you, for me, I use the word shrink and expansion all the time. So you've got to think, I want my people to they're thinking to expand, not to shrink, because I need to get in the nicest possible way, more out of them as I possibly can. I need to extract hidden potential so that it's not a threat to me. So you've got to feel very secure within yourself so you're not threatened because everybody has got golden nuggets in them and you need to extract that out for your business to expand. You need for them, it's not just what you've employed them to do, it's what else they bring to the table. So one of the way, there's plenty of ways to do it and you need to do them all. But it's not to be overwhelming for you as a leader. You have to rethink to yourself, you say, right, I've got to be a better listener. I've got to help this person feel significant. Now, significant is one of my big words. It is if there's any emotional state that everybody on this planet wants to feel, whether you're 2 years old or 102 years old, that is significant. People need to feel valid. They need to feel valued. They need to feel heard. They need to feel that they're contributing. If we don't feel we're contributing, then we will disengage. We will just be robotic. We won't be we won't go that extra mile, another cliche. We won't, that's what you need to do. So get your people to a place where they feel they can express what themselves properly without fear of judgment, without fear of somebody's belittling them, and that goes for their colleagues as well as their bosses. And so that everybody starts working better as a team. And if you have got some unrest within your team, then it needs to be addressed quickly. Don't let the rot set in. Don't let it. Don't do it because it will only fester and get worse. It needs to come out in the open. You need to facilitate that. And if you're not able to facilitate it, then you need to get somebody in who can. So you need to facilitate that, any unrest going on, so that people work better as, want of a better word, a family.
Mm.
Um, and you know, recruitment's damn well expensive. New people coming in, honeymoon period, the recruitment cost in itself alone, and then you have got everybody's got to get used to them, and then
Hmm.
so they're not working as well as they could, and then they might not fit. Oh my goodness me, it's a can of worms. So to hold on to your really good people is wise. So
Mm.
to do that, help everybody feel significant. If there's one thing you take away from this podcast is that word significant.
Mm.
Everybody in your team needs to feel it, and it's up to you as the boss to make sure it happens.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's so true. I think of all the different groups that I've been associated with and I currently am associated with, whether it's at work or outside of work. That's absolutely, yeah, that really rings true. You know, that idea that I actually matter. And it doesn't mean, not in a narcissistic way, the sense that I have to be the top dog or anything like that, but that there is a place for me here
Yeah.
and that you belong here, that there's going to be like if I'm not here, there's going to be a Tom-shaped hole in this particular community. Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I think everybody wants to feel like that. Like everybody's got their place, and in some respects, there's a hierarchical element to it. I mean, I do martial arts as well, and so I see this in a martial arts setting where it is very hierarchical in terms of earned skill level, you know, earned rankings because it's based on belts, and people have to earn those belts and achieve those things. So you respect that, but everybody's kind of got their place, and people that get along with it, that they accept what that place is and they work according to the place they are, but they want to feel like they are significant and that they are seen, that they are valid essentially in that particular environment.
Very much, and they have got their place, but that place can grow.
Yes,
That place
absolutely.
can evolve. You can move on. You can develop. You
Mm,
can find potential that you didn't know you had. That's delicious. That is the sweet spot. We have to when my kids were growing up, people used to say to me, "What do you want for your children?" And of course, you say happiness in health and all of that stuff. But the one word I would use for them is resourceful. I wanted my kids to grow up resourceful because rubbish happens. It's called life. And I'm not going to be able to protect them from that. So we need to make people resourceful. We can't keep giving to them. We need to give them the tools to be resourceful for themselves. We need to work in the workplace as the business leader. We need to give them the tools to be able to create something more magnificent than you thought was possible. That's what I call good leadership, is helping people feel resourceful, to feel significant as well. But significance is the big key word in a team. But
mm.
when you really got the team working, they are resourceful. It's magical when it works. And
Yeah,
it can work better. It
yeah.
can work better.
Yeah, definitely. It's that concept as well of synergy, which and that word gets used and abused all the time. But in its essence, it's so powerful, isn't it? That idea that one plus one, like me plus you, equals more than the sum of its parts, where it equals something far greater as an exponential effect that we're working together versus us being added together as atomized individuals. It's that idea of there being genuine synergy. I know people throw this word around all the time and it gets abused in various different ways. But really, it's something that I think, like you say, it is something that's quite significant, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the neuroscience of collaboration is strong. We've got some, we have many different kinds of neurons in the brain, and there is something called mirror neurons. And when we are act a certain way, some people will mimic that behavior. And when you are starting to work in a cohesive way, there's a rhythm to it, like you were saying with your chanting, there is a rhythm to that, as the working organism of more than one person. So you have got this. People get to the point where they think they know what each other's thinking. They will know what's going. They working so well as a team, and it is that to get a team at that level to that level is beneficial for everyone, including the business. So beneficial.
Yeah, and it makes life better as well, doesn't it? It makes us enjoy the association of others. It makes us enjoy the work that we're doing because I don't have to. we don't have to be the same as each other. In fact, we shouldn't be the same as each other because I'm bringing the best of me, you're bringing the best of you, and you're doing the things that are in your zone of genius. I'm doing things in my zone of genius, and we're putting that together, and it's building something that's better than any one of us could have created on our own.
Yeah, and the appreciation for one another. When somebody is stronger at something than you are, appreciate that. And
Mm,
you demonstrate your strengths.
mm, mm,
You're appreciating it as a team. I mean, it sounds awfully, I don't know, people go, yeah, 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 but goodness me, it does work.
mm.
You can make it work. This is not woo-woo. It's not something pie in the sky. It actually is a scientifically demonstrated set of things that we can do to make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. And just on that regard of in terms of working together and collaboration, I heard you speak fairly recently, and I asked you a question in the Q&A about kindness and acts of kindness and what that does to the brain. Could you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I think this is fantastic. I really want to get that distributed more widely, shall we say?
Yeah, surely. Well, w- I'll give you an example. Many years ago now, I had a meeting in London in Fulham, and I parked my car one side of a park. And the offices I had to get to were the other side of that park. So I was walking through the park. I had heels on pre-COVID. I don't wear them anymore. Got used to no shoes at all. But pre-COVID, I was walking in heels and it was autumn. So the leaves were wet and slippery. So I was really concentrating on where I was putting my feet. And I always walk quickly. So I was motoring along. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw this man asleep on a park bench. And he was covered in morning dew, and he had his hands under here because he was so cold, and he was asleep. And underneath the bench was about three carrier bags, which looked as if they were full of dirty rags. And I made the assumption that was all he had. And I kept walking. I got to the gate where the offices were and I went to have my meeting and I got back and I came back through the park and now the man is on my other side. And as I'm walking, he's still asleep. And I just kept going and I got to the gate where my car was and I stopped. And you know what? I just couldn't, I couldn't leave it. So I turned around again. I went back past the man third time and I went out to where the offices were and I found a supermarket and I bought him a drink and a sandwich. I came back into the park and I very gently, very, very gently walked up to him because I didn't want to wake him. And I put down the drink and the sandwich by his head and I backed off and I walked back to my car and I drove away. I didn't talk about that for a very, very long time, but I have done in recent years to demonstrate a point. And the point is this: I could do no wrong. For about 3 days, I was speaking at events, I was writing copy, I was doing my work was going so well, it was going through the roof. I was absolutely in a magical place of feeling great, and I was being incredibly efficient and effective. And this was actually before I studied neuroscience. It was a long time ago. So after that, I studied neuroscience, and I realized what I'd been doing with my brain at that time. And because when we put the brain in a pleasurable state, we're the most effective and efficient we can be. And the best way of doing that is through kindness, generosity, and altruism. Now, I did. Some people will say, "Oh, therefore, there's no such thing as altruism because you're getting something back in return." But I don't care. I just don't care because it works. It's what makes us decent human beings. Now, what I was doing chemically in my brain was I stimulated something called nitric oxide. Now, nitric oxide is a vasodilator, and it's like a gas, and it permeates blood vessels really, really fast. It doesn't stay in the system for long at all. It's very short lived. However, what nitric oxide is able to do is it can calm down cortisol, it can calm down adrenaline, it can calm down the negative chemicals in our system, and which enables us to elevate the feel-good neurotransmitters, the dopamine, the serotonin, and all of those other things. So you have this chemical response going on. Now, I know full well that my brain wasn't in this chemical optimum state for 3 days. That's definitely not how it works. It's very quick. Everything goes like this all the time in the brain. But the residual effect that it had on my performance and well-being was really astonishing. And my recommendation to anybody is, if you are feeling low, I'm not talking about clinical depression, that is something very different. But if you're feeling very low, doing something for someone else will help you feel better. If you are feeling anxious or you are feeling very stressed out, doing something for someone else will help you feel better and you will be more effective.
That's really powerful. And when we think about where this all comes from and what's going on in our brain, how our brains are set up, isn't that so interesting that it's almost as if to say you get this bump, you get this shot of nitric acid, sorry, nitric
Nitric
oxide.
oxide.
You get this bump of nitric oxide, and that gives you this thing for this time. Now go and do it again, and you'll get some more. Isn't that such a great way of living your life that you're able to do that, which is the opposite to what is instinctive for many people. When people are feeling low, that is, and again, not talking about clinical depression, but if people are feeling down or depressed, it's very easy to go inward in yourself and to feel sorry for yourself and to shut the door, pull the curtains down or whatever, blinds down, whatever, and just retreat. But actually, the solution oftentimes could be look outside of yourself and
Yeah.
serve somebody, be kind to somebody who
Yeah.
needs your help, who could use that help.
And also, um, it is wise not to brag about it. I mean, I'm talk about it now. I didn't for a very long time, but I do to demonstrate a point. But it is wise to just do it quietly.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
quiet.
It's very New Testament, isn't it? It's very New Testament. It's, along the lines of go and do it to, Christ in the New Testament talking about, do it unto the least of these thy brethren kind of thing. And then don't let the left hand know what the right hand is doing. In other words, do good things, but don't tell anyone else about it. It's so fascinating how all these different things kind of fit together in their own way. And I think we're figuring this out, aren't we? We're figuring out how all of these different disciplines, how all these principles and the science as well of the brain, how this all fits together and how we can create better lives for ourselves, lives of purpose, meaning and fulfillment, essentially, and not getting caught in the maelstrom of politics, economics, work restructures, whatever else is going on in the world, but actually focus on this is my life and this is how I'm going to live it in an expanded way, like you say, because I think we can, paradoxically, we can achieve greater significance through doing that stuff without bragging about it, but because you mean more to other people. I've seen this with people in my own life, the people who are loved by everybody are serving everybody, not burning. I don't mean burning themselves out. It might just a tiny little thing, just a smile. It might be a conversation, a shake of the hand, an acknowledgement. It could be the smallest, tiniest, ostensibly insignificant thing to the outside onlooker, but to the recipient of that thing, it means so much. And these people aren't burning themselves out or driving themselves crazy running around doing this stuff. It's just part of who they are and their habits. And I look at them, I think, yeah,
Yeah.
I think I should be more like that.
Yeah. I mean, again, we're going back to, helping people feel significant. But remember that we must be kind to ourselves as well. So it's wise that we don't turn this into a mission that is harmful to us. It's just relax and be a decent human being that you know you are. That's it.
That's a fantastic place to wrap things up at, Linda. And just before we do wrap things up, this is going to be released in the new year. Any new year or early year tips from a neuroscience point of view beyond what we've talked about to improve your neuroscience that you've got for anyone?
Okay. In the new year, people look up New Year's resolutions and new are thinking of new ways of running their business and new this, new that. That's absolutely great. But actually, rather than redesigning everything, think about the human brain. Think about redesigning an office space or redesigning your office space at home or redesign. Just think, yeah, do all that stuff, but just think about what am I doing with this? What am I doing with this most precious thing, this organ that I've got up there that is so utterly magnificent? Often a complete mess, but hey, it's so utterly magnificent. What can I do to use it, to expand it, to actually expand not just my thinking and my effectiveness, but also the way I treat people, just expansion. Please, 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 in 2026, don't shrink, expand.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Lynda Shaw, on the Real Clear Values podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure.
And with you, thank you.